Daffy, comics suck.
Comics are okay. I like comics.
Comics
They're not very
suck.
good.
What's wrong with comics?
They don't pay people enough.
Oh, you mean the big comic publishers? Yeah, they suck. $1.99? Are you out of your mind? This is Insert Credit, a relentlessly on-topic video game podcast featuring a battle-hardened panel of video game experts addressing a smorgasbord of questions about the hobby and industry we hold so dear. These experts have 6 minutes to address each topic presented to them, with any time overage punished with the sound of a horrible buzzer. I'm Alex Jaffe, and the year that I probably played the most video games was 2008.
Oh, okay. I'm Frank Cifaldi, and the year that I probably played the most video games, I'm going to say 1999, when I was just going emulator crazy and trying all the ROMs.
1999, are you out of your mind?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm Brandon Sheffield, and this is a real tough one. I keep worrying that we're going to get referred to as video game sexperts. You ever have that?
No, that's a Mabimbam thing. I'm not stealing
problem.
that.
I keep worrying that I don't even know what Mabimbam is. That sounds like.
Well, who's going to do that other than Jaffe? And Jaffe's not.
Yeah, I
gonna
guess
do that.
Exactly.
No one considers us experts except for Alex Jaffe.
No, but sexperts is the
People
problem.
consider us experts, but nobody considers us sexperts.
Some
I have
people.
this little worry and
I'm
fear.
specifically an asexpert.
So anyway, for me, when did I play the most video games? That is a heck of a question that I do not know the answer to. I'm gonna guess it was around 2006, 2007, when I was at the height of working at Game Developer Magazine. I was really just playing everything that came out and also playing all the Xbox Live indie games for research and so that somebody was playing them. But I don't know, it also could be, I played a lot of Yakuza recently. Does that count?
There's a few hundred Yakuza games, right?
I'm up to 5 now. Not my favorite one so far.
Pretty high. Well, we've got a guest joining us this week. Editorial Director of Digital Eclipse, Chris Kohler is here with us on the show.
Hello, that is me. I'm Chris Kohler. The year that I probably played the most video games was probably 2003, when I was literally just being paid by the government to sit in a house and play video games all day.
Tell me about that.
That was the year of my Fulbright scholarship in Japan, when I had pitched my book Power Up, and basically so I didn't have to. It's like I didn't have a job. I didn't have classes to go to because I was out of school. I literally was just being paid to write this book, and so. I mean, I could just sit at home and play video games all day if I wanted to.
Didn't we meet there, actually?
Yes. So we met in real life because you and I guess your girlfriend at the time were kind of like backpacking it around Japan, and came to Kyoto where I was living and stayed over one night.
Yeah. Man, I forgot that we actually stayed there.
You stayed there, and you had bought an FM Towns Marty. And in your travels around Japan, and you hadn't really tried it out yet, so you hooked it up to my TV, and we tried out the FM Towns Marty. Yeah,
that's right, and we got confused by the menus. That's right.
That does sound on brand.
Coming up on the 20th anniversary of that fateful meeting.
It's true. I have a bunch of videos because I also bought a digital camera that trip, and so I have these crappy shaky cam videos, and you are in some of them playing a flute or something.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I just had to look at those because we were Esper and I are using those videos, not the ones with you in them, for a thing. I specifically cropped out all the ones that had people whose faces I could recognize.
Gotcha.
Special thing. Look forward to that. Patreon subscribers, I suppose, and maybe
more.
So, Chris, what I didn't tell you about this podcast, as I briefed you before the show, is that I'm secretly going to be grading all of you on your responses throughout the episode. And whoever does the best wins the episode. And the reward is that they get to come up with a question for next week's episode.
Okay.
We have 2 winners to deal with this week because one got waylaid by a special episode. So I have a holdover question from Mathew Kumar this week. And later in the episode, I'm going to ask Brandon for his question for winning last week's episode.
I won something? Forgot.
You won with Young Spoiled Children's Bastard Academy. Remember that?
I remember that. Yeah.
Is this question going to be about Sensible World of Soccer?
It could be, depending on where your life path has taken you to this point.
Okay.
I'm not going to do the Scottish accent, so you're going to have to picture that in your mind. Mathew Kumar says, "Hi, friends. So a few weeks ago, I was going through boxes at my parents' place because I wanted to access my childhood and teenage game collection again. Imagine my horror when I discovered I was missing loads of Dreamcast games that I had for years believed myself to own. I went through all the boxes and have come to the conclusion that I, in the past, sold off a lot of them rather than packing them away. So my question is, are there any phantom games in your collection? Games you were sure you owned, but a past version of you disposed of without current used knowledge?
Oh yeah, they're in there all right. Some of those are very troubling to me. It's like, for example, where is my Japanese Dreamcast? Who's got it? I don't have it. I didn't sell it. Where the heck is it? I believe I lent it to Chris Woodard at some point. Chris Woodard, who has also been on the show and was an old insert credit person. I believe I lent it to him.
He probably buried it in the backyard.
Did he bury it and grow a Dreamcast tree? If so, where are my Japanese Dreamcast fruits?
You still have that FM Towns Marty?
I have one of the two that I purchased during that time. I don't really do this now, but at the time I was like, I have a very limited amount of money. And so I wound up borrowing some money from my then girlfriend, I believe is what I did. And I was like, this will be okay because I'm going to buy two Martys and I will sell one in the United States to pay for both of them. And that did work on multiple occasions.
That's good.
I do still have that FM Towns, but I don't have the other one that I bought. I bought two.
Yeah, it's hard for me to answer because I just intentionally don't have physical games. I have some, but
Do you lose any ROMs, Frank?
yeah, actually,
That's something.
I have.
We did, I
So-
should say, like we've done the story of when did I actually meet IRL Brandon. I met Frank IRL, I believe, just the next year because I went to Classic Gaming Expo in Las Vegas, and that was when Frank was. I always find this very funny that I met Frank in the transitory period of his life when he decided that he was no longer going to collect video games, and he brought
2002.
2002. Okay, so it was the year before. Yeah, because they did go to that CGE. Okay, and so he brought all of his NES games to Classic Gaming Expo, and this is the worst time to sell NES games because people at Classic Gaming Expo were like, NES isn't classic. Only Atari era is classic. And so
Well-
I actually I've got Frank's Donkey Kong Classics and Frank's Adventures of Lolo. I really specifically remember buying those for like no money from Frank Cifaldi. What he had at the show was, I think, maybe multiple bundles of just every Satchin game. Like,
Oh, yeah.
all the Satchin cartridges, all the boxes flat, all the manuals. That had a complete Satchin collection for $500. But to be clear, there was no way that I was ever going to spend $500 on a complete set of Satchin games at CG 2002. I spent $10 on two NES games that I kind of wanted, and that was it.
I remember you buying more than that, but maybe not.
Oh, it was probably more. I only remember those two.
I mean, I had a Donkey Kong Jr. Math complete for like $40 or something.
I did not get that.
Okay.
I would have, yeah.
Losing a ROM, yes. I mean, it's a little bit embarrassing to admit, but yeah, I have dumped some games that I've lost.
Video game preservation is hard, even for the people doing
It is.
Yeah.
So the one that comes to mind for me is that in my pursuit of having very clean digital copies of every unreleased NES game available, I went and backtracked, and there was this common practice for a while of people taking unreleased games and like modifying the title screen to say like made by me, and like selling them on cartridges, and like that was the only ROM available was like someone's vandalized version. And so I was going through and like replacing every vandalized game with a clean ROM by kind of going back to the source or like asking nicely to the people who currently own the prototypes, etc. And I have all of them except for Hoppin' Mad, which I did dump at one point. I swear, I just have no record of it other than I took a video of me dumping it. So I don't know what happened to that ROM or when I would have deleted data, but it is definitely gone.
Too bad.
How does that make you feel?
I don't know, it's fine. Like after you do preservation as your primary thing for 20 years, you realize like, yeah, stuff gets lost. Like I am also part of the process that I am trying to fix.
Are you sure it doesn't make you feel hoppin' mad?
No, I don't get it. The game's terrible. I don't care.
Well, fortunately, Frank, being part of the problem keeps you in business.
That's right.
Yeah. If you do your job too well, oh no, we've preserved all of video games. There's no reason to exist.
If you lose it, you
anymore.
can find it twice, and then you can tell the story again. I have some more Phantom ones, which is I believe I've told this on the show before, but there was this one time I was trading DS and GBA games with people in the office people wound up not bringing their games that day, but I had a bunch of games that I was gonna like not permanently trade, but like swap to try and then return later. I had a bunch of these games in my bag, and then I went to some game event. I don't remember. It was one of the random types that that all three of us used to go to, like for Turtle Beach or whatever. Who cares?
Oh, one of those.
I put my bag. Yeah, one of those. I put my bag down behind a curtain because there was no bag check, and it got stolen.
Yeah, that's the sound of them getting
That's right.
stolen.
I'm looking over here
That was
at
the
this
sound.
Metroid pinball for DS. I bet there's no game in there. I'm just gonna
Let's find out.
Let's find out. Yeah, there's no game.
All right.
Sucks.
Speaking of video game preservation,
Okay.
what sectors of video game history are in the most dire need of preservation and restoration?
Cool ones. Only the cool ones, please. Saturn.
Saturn's fine, dude.
It's dire to me.
The obvious answer is all of the like games as service games.
That's true.
Anything that isn't available as a complete, experience offline. Yeah, that means stuff like, okay, an MMO where you have to talk to the server to get the data you need to even play the game, but I think that also includes the community playing the game, right? So I think what's most needed is a concentrated effort to catalog and maintain a video record of games like Fortnite, for example. I know there's a lot of, probably archived Twitch streams of every update of Fortnite or whatever, but it's like, is that going to be true in 10 years? Like, is anyone actually collecting and cataloging all of these so that we understand the evolution of, the most important game of right now? I don't know.
I'm mad at Fortnite this week, so
We'll talk about it.
Okay. But I agree. Frank is right. It's got to be thems. And also the free-to-play games, like once those go offline, like I still have the game I've mentioned many times on this show because I became number 2 in the world at it, Princess Pajama on my iPad.
Yeah.
But the only reason I can play it is because I have an older iPad and I haven't updated it. If it were iOS, whatever the OS X for iOS is, if it were updated in the last 5 years, you wouldn't be able to play that game anymore. Even though I can play that game, I can't purchase microtransactions if I want to, which is part of the experience. The leaderboards don't exist; they aren't going to be updated. So those games are it's tough because they're the most difficult things to preserve. But I also think most of the people that are interested in game preservation right now aren't super interested in preserving those. They're a little more interested in NES game stuff. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I'm not
Yeah.
interested. But it's not like, oh, it's not important.
Right.
It's like I have finite resources, and it's just speaking for the foundation. I guess it's like we have 1.5 full-time people, and it's gonna be 2 very soon.
Ooh, you're hiring another half-time person.
Yeah, exactly. No, the half is becoming whole. We're so small that we have to concentrate on what it is that we can have the biggest impact on, and that's not doing like an iPad donation drive to rip games off of them. Like that's just not what we are capable of doing. And it's all of preservation is just people rolling up their sleeves and figuring out how to do the work. And all resources are finite, and unfortunately, things just die. As discussed with Hop and Mad, that's just the nature of it, and you got to learn to accept it and roll with it and just do what you're good at.
Speaking of donations, another big one is Java games, and especially like all the NTT Docomo and iMode games in Japan. Like a lot of those things are just the only place they exist. It's on some old phone, which is probably in landfill.
Yep.
No, not in landfill. They are recycled into Olympic medals.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. And it's like you have to do what you're passionate about as well. I mean, ultimately, Frank, I mean, you're very passionate about the NES and, things in that area. And I mean, if you were trying to do the same work that you're doing, but doing it about Java games that you hated, you know what I mean? You would burn out so much faster.
Exactly.
I mean, nobody's getting paid off of this. No one will ever get paid off of this. So it's like you have to be able to leverage the fact that people are doing it out of passion, and a lot of people are doing it. You're going to have 2 full-time people working on it, which is like 2 more than there ever have been, right? So
yeah. But yeah, that's absolutely true. And it's not just burnout. It's just that like, if I like what I'm doing, I'm going to do more of it faster. So that's just what it comes down to in all things in life, I think. Live your life that way, folks.
I guess preservationism as a pursuit is going after stuff that you miss from your own formative years. So it's just in general, you're not going to find a lot of people pursuing games that still exist in some form.
Yeah, I don't know. You might.
It's just always going to be chasing the already disappeared past.
If we're talking about non-funded, you know what I mean? Like if we're talking about people just doing it on their own because they care, yes, of course. But
We have to get to where these things are funded and are like the film archive or something where they're it's just
yeah, we
people's
have to
jobs.
basically restructure the entire country so that there is arts funding.
Yeah.
And then go from
Yeah,
there.
let's do that.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
But in the meantime, we're just scraping for like Patreon dollars
Right,
and stuff.
right.
So you get what you get.
Right.
I have another good one here though, which is I'm gonna say it.
Exactly.
I'm gonna do it because I really want to talk about the Taito X55, which is a Taito's karaoke machine that had downloadable video games. It was in 1995, and the first version of Cleopatra's Fortune, which is the game that I like, came out on that. And all of those games were theoretically not even supposed to be stored past the session in which you use them, because you rented them by the session. So to preserve those games is basically impossible. There's anecdotal evidence of them. There's news articles about it, but none of the games are saved. And it seemed the path to finding them would be very, very difficult. Too bad.
All right. I'm bumping this question up in the order because Brandon is raring to talk about it. Fortnite is rolling out a new game mode with striking similarities to the gameplay of Among Us. As some people have pointed out, this is not the first time Fortnite has made such a move. So what I'd like to ask is, where is the line between iterating on an idea and stealing an idea?
It's a tough line to describe.
It's not a tough line to place this particular thing on either side of.
No, this one's definitely in the stealing camp. If you wind up using the same or very similar numbers and very same or similar maps, then it's very clear what side that line you're on. But it does get a little weird when it's like, for example, Might and Magic Clash of Heroes is an excellent puzzle game that I really like, which is the technical mechanical aspect of it is very similar to Magical Drop or Money Idol Exchanger or similar, but the input mechanism, I should say, you pull things down, you throw them back up. But what you actually do is wind up forming troops in lines and then walls in horizontal lines, and functionally it plays quite differently, and the way you think about the game is super different. So there it's very clearly iterative, even though if this were like 1992, they might call it a Magical Drop clone if Magical Drop were more popular. But it's we called FPSs Doom clones for quite a while.
Yeah, a drop like.
Yeah. So yeah, where is the line? Depends on the game. But I guess it also depends on the intention. Like, I don't think that Might and Magic Clash of Heroes developers went out to be like, we really need to capitalize on the popularity of Magical Drop. It's time to do something in a similar vein. It inspired them to think of something else. And it's clear that it inspired them to think of something else.
Is Fortnite entire battle royale mode iterative of PUBG, or is it just theft?
I mean, it's a little of both, because and that one's extra complicated because PUBG was working with Unity engineers to make that. I mean, not Unity, Unreal. Sorry, my brain. So like, there's an even greater case for like code and intellectual property theft because they were theoretically working on it together.
Wow.
The idea of battle royale wasn't first done in PUBG either, but the way in which Fortnite grabbed it was remarkably similar to PUBG's implementation.
It's a good lesson to learn. It's a moral question, not a legal question, because the current legal thought process that's really been in place for almost the whole video game industry is that no gameplay mechanics are not protectable.
Right.
And so that if you do go forward with something that is brand new like this, you have to assume at this point that even the world's biggest video game companies may make a copy of those mechanics, and there's not much you can really do about it.
Right, like Tetris has they had to go down to copywriting like the block shapes. What was it? Something like that. That like they have some very specific things that are like, this is a Tetris game, and if you do these things, then you're infringing on us. But if you avoid those things just barely, then you're not.
I think my line might be like, how blatant is the intention of copy?
Yeah, I think intention is really important.
So like I would, absolutely call this stealing. I would call all the Threes clones stealing. I wouldn't call Zuma stealing. Because it's just like they were kind of looking at forgotten, discarded ideas, and like, yeah, that it's very much Puzzle Loop, but I don't think the intention was like, oh, cash in on the Puzzle Loop craze.
I think you can still steal something if it's not popular right now. Like if you see something and you're like, this didn't get its due, I'm going to do the exact same thing, but it will be more popular. I think that's still stealing. I would consider Zuma stealing, personally.
Yeah, maybe.
Chris, is Zuma stealing?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I really don't know. It's just because if enough people steal from everybody else, you end up with a genre. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I want to encourage that sort of creativity and iteration on things. Because after Oendon and Elite Beat Agents came out, you immediately saw a lot of other music games using that exact same interface on the DS. And of course, it's obviously where they got the inspiration from.
I wish one of them was decent.
Right.
They're all bad.
So the moral is, if you're going to steal, at least do it well.
Or have the courtesy to not do it well, so everybody just goes back to the original.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good one, too.
Right. Either one. Either do it really well or really badly. What are some unmade, mundane simulator games that are out there waiting to happen?
Shoe tying simulator.
Waiting for the bus and stuff happens. I don't know. There you go. Like sometimes Totoro's there.
That'd be cute.
Sometimes, weirdos walk by. The most exciting thing that happens is sometimes when the bus, pulls up, the door is right in front of you instead of to the side of you. And you get points because the bus chose you.
Or it's the wrong bus and you could you have to check.
Well, you don't know what happens after you get on the bus. After you get on the bus, your journey's over. This is a bus waiting simulator, not a bus riding simulator.
Yeah, but you have to get on the right bus.
Okay.
That's part of waiting for a bus.
Yeah, you get a bad ending.
Yeah.
I'm imagining a massively multiplayer Densha Day Go. One player is the conductor and everybody else is the passengers, and they have to wait for the right train and get on and off at the right stop, and they're trying to get to their business meeting on time.
Oh, that's fun.
Has there been a cash register simulator that anybody knows about? Like, I feel like that could be really fun. Maybe it's in VR. Maybe it's like Papers, Please, but it's a cash register.
I was going to say, it's absolutely, there's like 12 of those on Steam right now.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know that for a fact, but I know it.
Especially if it's an old school cash register sort of simulator, or maybe it's scanning stuff. I mean, I'm old enough that I can say that when I worked at a grocery store, we had, scanners had been invented, but they had not come to the grocery store, the little independent grocery store that I worked at. So it was literally every item had a price tag on it, and they came down the line, and I had to look for the price tag and enter it in manually. Which, listen, if you're gonna hire a bunch of random 16-year-olds to do that for you, like, you're gonna lose some money, not because they're stealing from you, but because that whole system just has so many holes in it. Even if somebody's trying to be honest, they're going to miss something every time.
It sounds much less mundane to me than barcode scanning.
It is. Of course, when we finally got the barcode scanners, it was like, oh my God, heaven. I don't have to tap with my fingers anymore on this keyboard. But I will say, you don't want to do it for 8 hours a day, you know what I mean? Unless you're a high school student. But to do it in a video game format would probably be interesting.
I keep unfortunately getting outside of the mundane. I've been watching this F1 Netflix show, and I was thinking about a F1 pit stop simulator. That probably already exists.
I feel like the rise in profession-based elimination reality shows, from the one where they're blown away, where they're doing glass blowing, Forged in Fire, where they're making knives and swords and things like that.
Yeah.
I think every one of those is an inspiration for a good simulation, probably a VR simulation game.
I'd do the glass blowing one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Is there a car restoration game?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure there is. There's power washing simulators and stuff, but that stuff it just doesn't feel that mundane. It feels like it's subreddit oddly satisfying and not mundane.
Right.
And Shenmue is mundane as a game because it's a game about being poor and having to wait for stuff.
Yeah.
So that to me is mundane. So I like the cash register thing.
And just like Shenmue, if you go deep and you capture every little detail of it, that's what can make it really interesting. Like I was just talking about this in another podcast, but like with Shenmue, it was like you couldn't do everything in Shenmue, but everything that you could do was simulated down to the last little detail. Like that's why buying a Coke out of a vending machine in Shenmue was so interesting. It wasn't just because you could do it. It was because literally you walk up to the vending machine, you press the button, you select what you want, you see it come out of the machine. He takes it out with animation. He cracks open the tab with it. You know what I mean? Every little step in the process happens, and it's like, how do you recreate everything in real that happens in real life? And that's what gets very interesting about it.
It's weird that you bring this up on another podcast because this is the only video
It's
game.
the only one.
Right.
It's weird how that was simultaneously what was fascinating about Shenmue and also what was massively, massively boring about it. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's cool that it's both at once, both of those.
Yeah. Something can be boring and good.
Yeah, I mean, playing the remake, that's just what I was struck by. Like when I played it at the time, it was just like, wow, you can do anything. I'm so high. But but playing it now is like, wow, this is so interesting how this design is intentionally making me bored. Like it's on purpose. And it's like I'm in this tiny crappy candy store just picking up candy to look at it because I have literally nothing to do but wait.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to look at this candy and think about it. Yeah.
I felt so guilty for feeling that way with the original Shenmue. I was like, I know I'm supposed to like this, but I'm so bored.
Yeah.
So there's a recent trend in professional wrestling audiences of bringing in a sign with a controversial RPG opinion on it. Anything from 9 is the best Final Fantasy to the worst Fire Emblem is better than the best Paper Mario. If you were at a wrestling event, what would you put on your sign?
Cancel Mother 3.
Nice. Nice.
Wow.
Hot one. I saw somebody recently had Panzer Dragoon Saga is better than Final Fantasy VII. I like it. I feel like that person stole mine.
It would probably be some controversial Final Fantasy opinion or something like that. But I mean, I feel like I've been doing a lot of work trying to get, Final Fantasy V is the best Final Fantasy to not actually be a controversial opinion anymore.
I think I would do something like any RPG is better than Persona 5. I would do something like that.
Wow.
The new Final Fantasy sprites are pretty good.
Fire Akitoshi Kawazu.
Yeah.
I love the new fonts.
Yeah, there you go.
I would put grinding is nice.
Some people believe that, though.
Yeah,
right?
it's relaxing.
There was I think it was an article or a Twitter thread or something like that, or maybe I don't know where I read this. Probably a Twitter thread about grinding versus whittling. Grinding being something that is painful, but you're just sort of pushing yourself to do it, versus whittling being something that is made to be relaxing.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Mhm.
That makes sense to me.
That's good.
Grinding is a great thing for when you're on a long phone call with your family that you just kind of wish you could be doing one other thing
Mhm.
Yes,
while
absolutely.
that's going on. And grinding is great for that. And sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I had something I could grind in right now because I know this is going to be a long conversation.
Oh, that's really good. Like I try to do work or something, but then I realize I'm not paying attention, and then like things have to be repeated, and then the phone calls longer.
Right. But if you're just grinding away in Castlevania or at Dragon Quest or
Yep.
whatever, and you're just hitting the buttons that you know you're going to hit.
Right.
then it's-
Yeah, that's what I'm doing some, bullshit in Final Fantasy V, like with the statues where you can just get ridiculous amounts of AVP just by casting level 5 death on them. You don't have to think about that. I'll just watch TV and I'll just do that for like an hour or two, just and like, oh look, all my characters are extremely powerful now. I didn't have to think about that. That's cool.
I like that stuff.
Mhm.
What was the question? Oh, it was a controversial RPG.
Signs on
Signs,
wrestling
That's right.
events.
That's right. Man, there's got to be some real weird ones you could have with like Quest 64 best RPG ever. I don't know.
Fantasy Star 3 is the best one.
Right, there we go.
I think I saw Quest 64 is better than Final Fantasy 7 or some Sacred Cow.
Maybe then what I would do is have some just ultra obscure stuff like Cosmic Fantasy 4 Part 1
Mhm.
is better than Linda Cubed. Which isn't true.
Yep,
Nobody would have any idea what I was talking about.
Yep.
That sounds pretty
I'm
good.
still sticking with Cancel Mother 3. I haven't.
No, that's
That would be
great.
great. Yeah,
You
that's
got
true.
the
That's
point
very
for
good.
that
Yep.
one.
It is a good one.
All right. In fact, I think we should move on because we just
Bring back the Bonk RPG. not controversial.
Yeah.
Everyone wants that.
Oh, looks like it's time for the break. We'll be back after a quick rest.
After these messages, be right back.
Right back. If you want to get a drink, Chris Kohler, now is the time.
I got one sitting right here.
If you'd like to use the bathroom, Chris Kohler, now is the
Nope,
time.
I just pee my pants on podcast.
If you'd like to grind out another level in Dragon Quest, now's the time.
That I will do.
Welcome back to the Insert Credit Show. We're here in episode 199 with Brandon Sheffield and Frank Cifaldi and Chris Kohler, and it's time to head into the Dirtbag.
The old DB.
Every single week, we take one question submitted to our generous patrons at patreon.com/insertcredit, where you can subscribe for just $3 a month for access to this forum where you can submit questions, access to our regular episodes one day early.
Oh yeah, Chris Kohler, you say one day early. After
But like,
that.
no, yeah, like Solid Snake.
Yeah, like you're.
But not
Oh,
but just like one day
okay,
early.
All right.
Yeah.
You want to set me up for it again?
No, just do it.
One day early.
Nice.
One day early. And even access to monthly exclusive bonus episodes and other treats.
Like the terrible strawberry candy. Like we
Yeah.
actually mail those to you.
And we mail butterscotch.
We mail one at a time, once a day.
And by the
until
way,
you stop.
you can also subscribe for more than $3 if you want to.
You could, yes,
that'd be
but
cool too.
I think people are unsure of how much of a commitment we ask. But
For $800
$3
a
you
month,
there.
you get episodes 3 months early.
3 months early.
That's right.
3 months early.
That reminds me, friend of the show and previous guest Lottie May recently sent me a bag of Magic Stars in the mail
Oh, that's nice.
after I recommended her
How are they?
Magic Star rating thread. I'm saving them. They're in the freezer, which is the best place to keep candy. Don't at me.
I don't know about chocolate.
No, chocolate especially.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm not on board with this.
Well, you're wrong. Seasons asks, why and when did we start calling old games retro?
Ooh.
I don't want to know the answer.
Because it's incorrect, right? It's not. You would apply that to a new product that is a throwback, like retro clothing would be like, I just made this today, and it's sort of a throwback to an older era.
I don't know.
But
I think the term has changed.
buying new 60s looking clothes is kind of the same as buying a used 80s video game. So I think it still applies. I don't think it's incorrect.
Yeah.
No, I think that would be vintage.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Like
Yeah.
vintage is more like retro just has that connotation, or maybe even the actual definition of being throwback versus vintage, which it means old. Yeah. We should just call them old video games. Can we just start calling them old?
Where's the cutoff?
That's a different question.
Yeah.
There's that company that was called Older Games, and they could have had that be the term.
Yeah.
If they had stuck around.
Like Retronauts, we can rename it to Old Knots. I'll let Parrish know. We got to do that.
Get him on the horn, the proverbial horn. What was the question again?
Why do we call old games retro games?
Oh yeah, I don't know. And
when?
And when did it start?
And when did it start, and who did it? Who do we blame?
Who do we blame?
Yeah.
Well, when did Retronauts begin?
It was,
Because it's earlier than that.
2006. Yeah, so it's before that. Yeah.
So we know at least it's earlier than that. I feel like I didn't hear it in the 90s personally, because like maybe at some point we went from classic to retro, gaming to retro gaming, because I don't remember hearing Atari games and Intellivision games referred to as retro. I think NES was the first era. Once that got old enough that NES became retro, right?
I don't know. Like I'm sure that people in the early 90s called Atari games retro. I can't substantiate it. I'm literally trying right now on the Internet Archive.
Yeah, I see like retrogames.cc and CZ date back to like 1994 and 1990.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Good research. I like that.
It's just always been with us,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it would have to. It couldn't
because in the 80s, I mean, Atari stuff was still on shelves. You know what I mean? So only in the 1990s would we even have a concept of there even being a category of video games that we would call classic games.
Slug Russell's Space War was very retro when I was in the 70s.
Classic was referred to pretty early, I think.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess not classic, but like, I don't know. Like in the 80s, did people talk about classic video games, meaning like from a different era? It all felt like
I mean, there's definitely some magazine articles from the 80s about classic games from like 5 years
Yeah,
prior.
so do they mean like this older era of video gaming, or
Yeah.
they do? Okay, well.
I mean, I wish I could point to something
Right, yeah,
specific,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I
well.
mean, there's my memory says that there's definitely something in like electronic games about classic games,
Interesting.
like classic arcade.
Wow.
I guess stuff was moving along at a faster clip in a certain way at that time. It
Right,
was like,
right.
A little bit.
we got this new transistor, and now everything's different.
Throwback to the era of 2 weeks ago, back when games were good.
You remember like you just get a game and like you turn it on and it would just play and like you wouldn't have to patch it. Like, gosh, it was so much better. It's just why can't we return to those days?
Those YouTubers tell you what, heck them all into space. Not so they'd die, but just so that they can't try to get their YouTube videos up in my algorithms.
My favorite sort of spin-off joke about that thing is, well, it's not even a joke. It's that that totally fake Coleco Chameleon thing. One of the requirements for making games for this, which no one ever even attempted to do because there's never a system, was that it cannot have any bugs.
Right.
Oh, right.
Well, because you can't patch it, so I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
you would just make no.
Be like the old days. There were no
There were no
bugs
bugs in
those
those
didn't have
games, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do remember, when, of course, being on the internet when the original Xbox was coming out, and people were like, they're putting a hard drive in every box. Just you wait. That means console games are gonna ship unfinished, and they're just gonna plan on patching them. When they come out, they're gonna sell you a buggy game, and then they're just gonna, don't worry, we're gonna patch it.
That's ridiculous.
And that turned out, I mean, obviously that never happened. So
No one's ever done that before.
No.
Their concerns were completely unfounded.
I wouldn't do that.
The end.
Please don't play the unpatched version of any game I've ever worked on. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's fine. There's a lot of controversy right now over the level of trigger warnings and content warnings needed in video games, and how smaller studios tend to be held to higher standards than larger ones.
Wait, are we talking about SJWs right now?
Yes.
We are, in fact, talking
Ooh,
about
okay,
SJWs.
let's roll, boys.
Let's roll, babies. What's the solution here? How do we crack this nut?
Well, I just want to kind of address the boyfriend dungeon situation, because it's a little weird to me and it's a little difficult to talk about, because the controversy as pitched is that in boyfriend dungeon there is some like stalking and stuff from a character that happens that is traumatic to people in a game that they assumed, and which was sort of pitched as like a light and airy game experience. But of course there is value to making people uncomfortable with art, and that's what they were trying to do. And so they actually did have pretty good content warnings, but then they made them more explicit. But the thing that has bothered me about this conversation is that there have been a lot of folks out there, including myself, who've been really up in arms about the idea that people should be able to share their art. They should be, especially marginalized people, should be able to put forward an example of their trauma as a piece of art that is something that you will think about, that will inspire you to think. And so people should be able to make these kinds of experiences. But the part that bugs me is that I can't find that many people that were saying you shouldn't do that. And I actually talked about this with Ash Parrish, who's been on this show many times. She's our good friend. She found some examples of people getting in there, and some people making some decent points about, like, if you, especially if you thought it was going to be one kind of game and it winds up being another, then it can blindside you. But what I worry about is that we got such a huge number of people saying, like, everyone's telling us that we can't make our art, and that's terrible. And like all the big retweeted things were like, you must be able to tell your story, and these people that are trying to stop us shouldn't be able to, or like this is limiting us and everything. And it made me feel like we were putting outsized importance on a small group of people that were maybe not even making statements that were that bold. And in the process, we wind up making people feel like they're less able to put their art out there, because we're saying that there's this force that's out there that's trying to stop you. And I'm not sure that force trying to stop us is that big, but we may have made it appear much larger than it was, because we were all so upset about it. So that's long string of text that I have about that, because it's been weighing on my mind, and I'm a little worried at my own complicity in perpetuating this idea that there's a big group of people out there trying to stop us from from doing art about difficult subjects and going and looking for it, I did not find as much of it as I found, the opposite.
I bring this up because I think I've solved it. Me and me alone. I think I know what we have to do about this.
Have it. Let's have it.
And I'd like to put that out to the audience, and I can't wait for everyone to tell me why I'm wrong. Here's the thing. Content warnings are absolutely valid. They're absolutely important. Everyone has the trauma that they've gone through and things that can set them off that are just not experiences that the developer might have even had in mind. It's all very important. I want to say that. It's good to have trigger warnings and content warnings. But there is a website you may be familiar with called doesthedogdie.com. Are you familiar with this website?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is a website that started as a way to check whatever movie you're about to see, if a dog dies in it, but it has expanded over the past few years to cover all kinds of content warnings, things that can set people off and that you want to go out of your way to avoid. So it can keep the art itself from having to over-explain or express its own potentially upsetting concepts and provide that resource for people who need it. If such a database could exist for video games, not just with user-submitted tags, but one that like developers and publishers could be motivated to send through based on the tags set up on the website, then people who experience these very real trauma would have a place to go to try and avoid these situations that may potentially be triggering or hard to deal with without even impeaching the art itself. Is that a dumb idea?
Well, yeah. I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to say.
No, please
well,
tell
yeah.
me. Tell me.
Well, having an external website where people have to go to try to figure something out is never going to be a solution.
Why not?
Because not everybody's going to have access to the internet when they're starting the thing. Not everybody has access to the internet, period. Like maybe Boyfriend Dungeon comes out on a cartridge and someone's mom hears that it's fun, they buy it for you, and you don't have the internet, there's
no bugs because
no bugs,
Right.
because it came out on a cartridge. No, I think it's pulling teeth to get developers to even put the stuff that they need to put into the ESRB, partially because of the money involved, but also partially because it's like, who cares? In a way, like, what, you don't have to put content warnings on visual art or movies. And
Right.
I think that it might potentially be good to do those things, but I just don't think that, okay, maybe it's not that it's a bad idea. It's just it feels unfeasible, and also I don't know that most people would use it.
I also just never think make another product is the solution to like anything.
Yeah, it's got to be inside the thing that you've got. I think content warnings have to be in the game in an intro sequence. And Boyfriend Dungeon did have them, and I feel like they were pretty adequate, but they updated them to be more adequate. You just got to put them in the front of the game.
You just got to put them in the game.
Yeah.
So are we going to start seeing more of that going forward?
I think so. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because it'll get to where the kinds of people that really need to look through those will be looking for stuff, and the kinds of people that don't care, it'll be another screen they bypass. We already bypassed like 10 screens to get to the start screen already, so it'll just be another one of those.
It's a new idea, right? The idea of putting content warnings in front of video games.
Yeah.
And so people are going to work out the best practices. And the only way to really work out best practices is to try it and put it out there and see how it goes. And in the case of, Boyfriend Dungeon, putting one out there, getting some feedback that it could be better, and then being able to patch it. And if it had been a Coleco Chameleon game, they wouldn't have been able to patch the content warnings. So they'd really be in line. What they did with the content warning is great. They're getting a certain amount of pushback, though, that I have kind of seen of the idea that the player should be able to opt out of that entire subplot, or remove that villainous character from the game, which, I mean, I think is pretty much a non-starter, and I hope that people understand why that would be an attack on people's art.
It's a different narrative experience.
Yeah, that's no good. What if you put it in like the accessibility option so that you knew to look for it there?
Oh, that's a whole lot of game design.
Put what in the accessibility options?
An accounting of content warnings.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought you meant the removal of that character. Okay.
No, I mean, like, if you're someone who is looking to avoid particular content, that would be a place to put it rather than it showing
What?
up for everybody who
What
plays it.
problem are you solving? I mean, the spoiler problem?
Yeah, I think people are,
Okay.
there's a concern about going into a product and not wanting to know this information going in, wanting to experiencing it from a blank slate.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think it would have to be. I think it would have to be something other than accessibility because it isn't. It isn't going to be an option you can turn on or off most of the time.
Right.
It's just like where the credits are and options.
Yeah, you could have a
is
content
warning.
warnings with
That's
like
exactly
a
what I'm
little
talking about.
potential spoilers next to it or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that could work. Maybe we'll do that in our next
That's
game.
more feasible than my website idea, I guess.
So actual fix, just real quick, is like platform holders should require it as part of the submission process.
Yeah. Okay. Brandon, do you want to do your question or do you want me to do one of our beloved segments?
I'll do one.
Okay.
It's very vague, so I hope that this is fine. But I'm curious to hear some of people's favorite side quests because there's this phenomenon that happens in video games where writing a long narrative hard, but writing a short one pretty easy. So sometimes you wind up in your Yakuzas and your whatever else's having some little side stories that are super fun, little goofy things, all self-contained little tiny arcs that last 10 minutes, and those are very satisfying. So I wonder if anybody's got any of those that they have particularly enjoyed throughout the years in any sort of game. It could be one of them old ones, one of them retro games.
Vintage.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard not to just think of Yakuza because
What's your favorite Yakuza one?
I don't know. I don't really have like a memory of anything. I don't retain things in my brain. But I really enjoyed the almost every side quest in those games, and in fact, I reluctantly go through the main quests to get more side quests. Like I just want these games to be these dumb short stories, and I'd rather those dumb short stories, contribute to a narrative than actually be side missions.
Yeah, I think forget which Yakuza it was. I was recently making some tweets about because I was looking at the trophies on PlayStation. So it was something like 80% of people had not done 10 side quests in one of these Yakuza. I think it was 4.
Oh my god.
Wow.
And I was like, what?
Why do you play
It really blew my whole mind away because I was like, I think we would agree here. Like everybody says, the side quests are what you do in Yakuza. Like that's what makes it. We all agree that that's why you play Yakuza, and it turns out that it's just completely wrong. And like 80-something% of people just didn't do it.
I don't think gamers like games. I think they just, check off that they played games.
Right.
Well, we're not talking about gamers. We're talking about meta gamers.
Talking about.
Mm.
I didn't like The Witcher 3, as I've mentioned on here before, but I did like the side quest where you had to go through a haunted house and figure out what these ghosts were up to. That was pretty good. And the other side quest where there was another kind of a ghost that was going around and turned out there was some skeleton under a well. That was pretty good too. I like the ones where there's a tiny self-contained mystery that you can solve, and then once it's solved, you're like, yeah, I figured that out.
I really love the drug buying and selling mechanics of Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars. I think I spent 10 times as much time on that than I did on the actual game.
I don't think that's a side mission. That's a mini
Yeah, it's a
game.
mini game.
Yeah, all right. Fair enough.
Yeah, this is less of a side mission and more of like a peripheral thing you could do. But I liked in Shining Force 3 how, and I don't remember the exact specifics of this, but how I remember it vaguely is at some point you could find this giant egg and then you could collect it. And then when you collected that giant egg, it would hang out in your war room where you could see all the characters that you have, which makes you think, oh man, I could hatch this egg. And then later at some point, you find a chicken that you can collect, and you're like, "Oh man, I bet I could hatch that egg with this chicken." And then of course it is true that you can hatch the egg with the chicken, and then you get this little semi-useless character that you can use that was hatched from that egg. But I love that kind of stuff when the game gives you a hint, a very strong indication that maybe you can do this thing, and then you can do that thing. I love it.
There's a bad side quest in Skyrim I really like.
Let's hear it.
You're arrested for some crime that you didn't commit, and you're thrown into like this slave mine. All your weapons and stuff are taken away, and you just have to work in a mine. But the game forgets that you can use magic, so you could just do that to kill all the guards and get out of there. And I think that was a pretty funny oversight.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that kind of stuff. Derailing my own topic. You all saw that there came out an explanation for the follow a fox to treasure.
Yes.
Yeah, I loved that. That ruled.
Pretty good. The answer for
Look
people
that
that
up.
were not looking at Twitter was, so there had been this long-standing rumor, which was more or less true, that if you followed a fox, it would go to treasure. The short version of the explanation is that the fox, the only thing that it does is run away. And when it runs away, it's trying to get to something that is 100 triangles away. And the easiest place to find 100 triangles is like campsites and other areas that have been specifically made to be more ornate than the rest of the 3D mesh in the rest of the world, where there's nothing happening. And so the fox is just trying to go away to a place where there's more triangles, and there tend to be treasures and loot in those places. And that's why.
Yeah.
So it's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
So it does lead you to treasure.
It does.
It just nobody programmed that.
Not a side quest, but Jaffe's thing about the oversight with the magic reminds me of the Phantasy Star 3 thing. Are you guys all familiar with it?
Nope.
Not me.
Oh, it's great. Okay. So the beginning of Phantasy Star 3, you're in the town and you got to go talk to the king because it's an RPG. And you go and a bad thing happens and you get thrown in a dungeon. And what you're supposed to do is wait for someone to let you out because that's what RPGs do. But the dungeon is, in code, a dungeon. There is an item in the Phantasy Star universe that lets you escape dungeons.
Oh man.
And if the first thing you do before you go to the castle, you go to a shop and you sell all of the clothes off of your body, you can buy an escape pipe to escape the dungeon. So you get thrown in jail, and if you use the escape pipe to escape, you escape the dungeon, and you're in kind of a broken state of the game where like you'll talk to NPCs and they just will not say anything to you and stuff like that. Your kidnapped wife is just in her room, but she won't talk to
you. Just like my wife.
If you go talk to the king, they actually found this bug before they shipped. You go to talk to the king. The king will be like, "Oh man, we didn't think you'd be that smart, but you broke the game. You have to reset."
Nice.
Yeah, it's really good stuff.
There's a lot of like instances like that in gaming history where they discover the bug and then they can't fix the bug, but they will put something in there that's like, "Oh, you found the secret. You found the secret. Well, bye."
Yeah.
Wing Commander's my favorite. You know that one?
That one rules.
No.
I'll explain it real quick, which is that they had a bug where no matter what, when you quit the game, there would be like a pop-up error and you had to click OK, like in Windows. So they just hacked that error to say, "Thank you for playing Wing Commander."
Ah, okay. Nice.
No one ever thought anything of it. It was like, "Oh, yeah, you're welcome."
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Wing Commander, for providing me such quality entertainment. Okay.
I got a question for you all. What is the Ghostbusters 2 of video games?
Okay, I guess we have to define the Ghostbusters 2 because I just rewatched it and I didn't think it was that bad. I liked it.
Oh, I agree. Actually, I think it's all right.
It's a fine movie.
But I think what Ghostbusters 2 is they made this comedy that was explicitly sort of for adults, but then, accidentally branded it so well that children wanted to see. You know what I mean? Like Ghostbusters 2, Dan Aykroyd gets the blowjob from the ghost. You know what I mean? And it's clearly like a PG-13 movie for like older teens and adults, but then they got that great Ghostbusters logo and they got Slimer, and then it just appeals to kids. And so they made Ghostbusters 2 with Ghostbusters at the birthday party, and and it was more family friendly. What, if I guess from my perspective, like what accidentally appealed to maybe a different audience than they initially anticipated, and then had to follow that up with something that maybe played more to that audience that they got. ActRaiser 2 is ActRaiser 2 the Ghostbusters 2 of video games. They created this wonderful fusion of simulation and action, and then they put it out there and people were like, "I love the sword fighting, really hate the part where you're the doofy little angel dude. Take that out."
Yeah, that's not
and
bad.
They were like, "We're idiots, so we will."
I was thinking about it from the other direction, where like movie properties that weren't supposed to appeal to kids, and then they're like, "Let's make an NES game out of this," like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Hudson Hawk.
Hudson Hawk, sure. Okay.
There's a Hudson Hawk NES game somehow.
Yeah, and Platoon.
Platoon. There you go. Platoon is is the perfect version
Ridiculous.
of that. Yeah.
Let's get that Barton Fink video game going.
But that's not exactly the
No, it's not.
question.
No, it's not.
So, I mean, what comes to mind for me from Chris's explanation is like Call of Duty action figures at Target, but that's not really a video game, though. I think Brandon, that's a pretty good tangent that might be an answer. I'm not ready to rule out that it might be something like that. But I think to be true to ourselves, it's what Chris described, which is that a sequel video game that diverges from the first one to appeal to people who they didn't anticipate liking that first one.
I'm not 100% sold on my own idea here, but if we consider Ghostbusters 2 as attempting to appeal to an audience that then didn't exactly show up for it and wasn't exactly as pleased as they might have hoped.
Well, I think the kids liked it.
We could say any Sonic game after Sonic Adventure 2 is like they continue to pander that they're finding this audience that they think is there. Like Sonic Boom, for example. They're like, kids like this and adults like this. We'll make some sort of like a little, maybe it'll be like Adventure Time, but it's with Sonic and it's in 3D and it just, people didn't want it. I'm not 100% on this idea, but I feel like it's a direction that you could extend it to.
That's pretty good.
Maybe like a Metal Gear Survive.
I don't know if they were like, oh, we gotta pivot the Metal Gear franchise. I think it was more of a spin-off in that case. Yeah, I like the Sonic thing. I think there's something
probably
there.
Actually the banjo simulator that they made out of Phalanx 2. I think that's probably it. Because
that's a very niche joke.
They made that Phalanx game and they put an old man playing a banjo on the front of it, and all those banjo players were like, "Oh man, love that Phalanx." But
I think most like PlayStation 1 sequels to 2D games that are now 3D games.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. We're just stabbing at ideas instead of games. I think ActRaiser 2 is actually a pretty good answer.
Good answer.
Good answer.
Wow. Speaking of which, I think it's time for us to go into one of our signature segments to wrap up the show. We're going back to Famicom Feud.
Woo.
Good segment.
Famicom Feud is my Family Feud ripoff. I have a preset list of games or whatever that you all have to take turns guessing what's on the board based on the clue. Each of you has 3 strikes. Whoever is the last remaining, or whoever is the last person to get the last remaining item on the board, is the winner of the episode. The order is going to be Chris, then Brandon, and then Frank, which gives Frank the greatest opportunity to lose, which I think you'll appreciate. Anyway, I have here today a list of 14 games from the 80s and 90s cited on Wikipedia's page for video games notable for negative reception. Your goal is to try and guess all of them, starting with Chris.
Oh, wait, so we can't look it up then, right?
Like, you cannot look it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, good. No, I'm glad you clarified.
Yeah, I was typing. So video games notable for negative reception, was that
right?
It?
Chris is first.
Jurassic Park Trespasser.
Show me Jurassic Park Trespasser. No, I'm afraid that's strike 1.
Well, now I'm mad at Wikipedia.
Remember, these are from the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
E.T. Atari 2600.
Show me E.T. E.T.'s on the board.
Boom. What number is it?
The games are listed in chronological order.
Okay.
So that's number 3.
Okay. Pac-Man on the Atari 2600.
Show me Pac-Man. That's number 2.
Nice.
All right. Daikatana.
Show me Daikatana. Oh, I'm sorry, not on the list.
That was a good answer.
That's your second strike, Chris.
Is it my turn?
It's your
Son
turn.
of a heck. I'm already running dry. I'm coming down off my high of ET. Notable negative reception. I wonder. No, I don't think. I was gonna wonder if Deadly Premonition would be on there since it was notable for its polarizingness.
But that's past the 90s.
Past the 90s. Oh, that's well past the 90s, isn't it? Okay. Dang. This is a tough. It's a tough one. There's so many options, and I don't want to be wrong. I want to be right. Bubsy.
Show me Bubsy.
No,
Bubsy 3D is on the list. Number 12.
No, that doesn't count.
I meant Bubsy 3D.
Fine. I'm
You
counting
meant
it.
Bubsy 1, which had great critical reception despite being a bad game.
As soon as I said Bubsy, I was like, no, Bubsy got... what I was going to say was Bubsy 2.
More in retrospect, terrible. But...
I'm going to the judges, and they're allowing Bubsy 3D.
Nice. Fine. Okay. I keep not thinking of PlayStation. Show me Cosmic Race.
Show me Cosmic Race. No, not on the board.
Lame.
Chris, you've got one strike left.
I have one strike left. Okay.
But we don't want him out of the
okay.
game. So like,
No, you can help
No.
Brandon and Frank, but you can't win the
Okay,
game
okay.
if you get another strike.
How about Mortal Kombat for the Super Nintendo?
Show me Mortal Kombat. No, not on the list.
I take issue with this whole list then.
Yeah.
Yeah, start thinking like Wikipedians in order to make this happen. Okay, negative reception. I want to say Sonic 3D Blast. But I don't think it was that negative. I think it may have been after the fact that people were like, "This is the only Sonic game we got on the Saturn." So maybe that's
No.
yeah, that's probably not a good one.
Okay, Atari 2600, ET and Pac-Man are I think the two big ones.
Oh yeah, and there's going to be one before that.
Those are number 2 and
Yeah,
number 3
yeah.
on the
One
list.
earlier.
There's one
There's one
earlier.
earlier than that? Oh.
Yeah, there's one earlier.
That's notable for a negative reception.
Who was receptioning games?
I mean, is it like
Yeah.
I mean, could it be like computer space because people got confused by it? Hence that's why Bushnell created Pong. Like
I don't think so.
I think so. Maybe there was a bad
you're
Space
Don't get
Invaders
stuck
book.
there. That one's too
okay,
hard.
okay.
Like
That one's difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after Atari,
And there are 2 after Bubsy 3D.
okay.
Oh, okay.
only two. Okay.
This is not a great answer because I don't think it was that noted by people, but I feel like Bushido Blade was super disappointing to people. Sorry, Bushido Blade 2.
Show me Bushido Blade 2. Not on the list. Brandon, that's your first strike.
Okay. Show me Earthbound.
Oh, I like that.
Show me Earthbound. Not on the
This
list.
list sucks. This list sucks.
Hate this list. Okay, now it's Kohler's turn to just choose one, right?
Kohler can help you guys out.
I'm trying to think here, but clearly all of my ideas were bad. Negative reception, like on the NES, something came out and it was like, oh no. How about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 for the NES? Does somebody want to take that and run with it?
I don't, because who's reviewing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 1989?
Yeah, well, no. The question is, who's writing this Wikipedia page?
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
It could be retroactive.
So the reception would have been Game Pro and Video Games Computer Entertainment. That's about it.
Up to you whether you want to take Chris's answer or come up with your own.
I don't like it.
I'm not sold on TMNT because I think that people liked that enough. I was going to go for Bart versus the Space Mutants. This isn't my final answer, but I'm also feeling like the people of the 90s would just be like, do you like Bart? Here's his video game, you know?
Yeah,
Here's your Bart
that's
card.
my memory.
Yeah.
I do have an NES one in mind that it's not great, but it might work.
So
but it's got to be for me.
Okay. So I gotta figure something out here. 80s and 90s. Like I'm trying to find Genesis games because that's what I know, but I can't think of ones where people were like, this sucks on account of how much the Genesis rules. That makes it difficult.
For 16-bit, I was just thinking, yeah, well, there was controversy over the Mortal Kombats.
Right.
I remember Time Killers on the Genesis was considered to be like this, kusoge, like maybe that.
Yeah, it could be Time Killers, could be the Doom 32 export.
I mean, I have an idea that I'll give you because I don't want to use it. I don't know if that's allowed.
No.
You can go for it if you want to.
Rise of the Robots.
Oh, Rise of the Robots. Yeah, that was pretty bad. Pretty notable. Okay, I'm gonna hold on to that one, and then I'm gonna go with. Oh no, never mind. People liked. I was gonna go with what is it? Race Driving on the NES, and it was so. You know what I'm talking about, or is it Hard Drive? What was that one?
Hard Driving never came out.
I don't think
NES,
did Race Driving.
No, neither did Race Driving.
No.
Well, that's probably why I got such a negative reception. Then.
Brandon, I need an answer.
I gotta choose something. I know.
Friday the 13th on the NES.
Yeah. Wait. Okay. I'm gonna say Street Fighter 2010.
No.
Show me Street Fighter 2010.
Oh, come on.
Oh, that's not on the
Bad
list.
idea.
It was Brandon.
Yeah,
we're giving you all this like potential good ideas, and you're like, I'm gonna go with the worst idea possible.
I'm gonna take one off the board. Friday the 13th was on the list.
Nice.
That's number 5.
Yeah, I thought that was a good one. So,
Well, I went with Street Fighter because I remember people being upset that it wasn't a Street Fighter game.
Street Fighter 2 wasn't a thing yet.
Street Fighter 2 wasn't a thing yet. Okay. Whoops.
Yeah.
Frank, you've got one strike.
I tried to
left.
figure out the most logical NES game was what I did. And here's what I came up with. Ghostbusters.
Show me Ghostbusters. Not on the list.
All right.
Okay. I'm the last one.
You are the winner, but you also have one strike left. If you want to try to clear the board here.
Well, considering it took me half the entire episode to come up with my last one, I'll try to make this a little faster. What do we got? What's disappointing? Got to be some RPGs that people really hate out there? Is that something? No.
You don't have to think too hard about this.
I know.
You've already won.
I keep feeling like there's a racing game that I'm just missing. Like some 3D racing game like what's that Bullfrog one? Grand Chaser? No, what's it called?
Brandon, I think that your particular affinity for obscure and odd video games here is actually like hamstringing you, is absolutely ruining you for this game.
I'm gonna help you. There are no racing games on this.
Okay, so it needs to be something popular. Strider 2.
Show me Strider 2. No, not on the list.
Well, I am looking at this list, and yeah, we've all failed.
Okay, what is it? What is it? Give us the full list here.
All right,
that particular. Okay, you want the full list? Or, yeah, just do the full list.
I'm gonna shout out a number, and Frank, you say it.
Okay.
1.1.
That is Custer's Revenge.
Of course. 1.4.
I hate this being on here. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde on the NES. That is not a notable game in any way.
1.5 is, of course, Friday the 13th. Moving on to the 90s, 2.1.
This is one that we probably should have gotten. Action 52.
Oh, fair.
No, who cares about that?
2.2.
Night Trap. I don't agree that it had a ton of negative reception. It was.
I guess it had a negative reception from Congress.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But then so did Mortal Kombat. Yeah.
Yeah. 2.3.
So this is one where we should have thought more like Wikipedia. The 2 Zelda games on the CDI.
Oh,
I would have counted any of them.
fair enough.
2.4.
I might as well throw this in too. Hotel Mario, which is actually a fine game on the CDI.
2.5.
Very memey, especially with limited run games. Plumbers don't wear ties.
Sure.
Totally not
2.6.
One that we could have gotten theoretically, Shaq Fu.
Oh, that's true.
2.7 was the questionable Bubsy 3D. 2.8.
2.8 is one that I thought about and said, nah. Mortal Kombat Mythologies, Sub-Zero.
Oh.
And finally, 2.9.
This is where we all failed. Superman 64.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Somebody should have gotten Superman 64.
Yeah.
But congratulations, Brandon. You sucked the least out of everyone who sucked this episode.
Probably because I got 2 easy ones. And
yeah. This is the time where we do recommendations and plugs. Talk about the stuff you're working on if you want to do that. But what you absolutely should do is give some recommendations to our listeners about what they should do between this episode and the next to entertain and enrich themselves.
I'll go real quick, which is I might have said this, so I'm sorry if I've said this already, but we got Paramount Plus and have really been enjoying the recent Twilight Zone series, which is often executive produced, I believe, and sometimes written by former insert credit person Heather Ann Campbell.
She's in there. Are those new Star Treks? Should I bother with those?
I thought we were talking about this. No.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, because you want Star Trek. You don't want... So these are 2 shows that are fine. They're okay TV shows. But they're not Star Trek shows. They are shows within the Star Trek universe.
Okay. That's what I've been figuring out. So, okay, I won't. I'm going to leave it alone. Okay, I have some recommendations. One is not a recommendation, but just an anecdote I wanted to tell, which is that I was talking to my insurance company, State Farm, about renter's insurance stuff. They were like, what are you insuring, like jewelry or whatever? And I was like, actually, it's video games. And my insurance agent was saying, so, you have these games, maybe you need to list them out. And so that, like, if you have this, for example, super rare version of Blue Stinger on the Dreamcast, you can make sure that it's secure. I was like, wow, dude really came up with Blue Stinger on the Dreamcast as his example.
Wow.
Like, I wasn't saying that. That's him coming up with it. So that was
incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I loved that. I didn't expect to hear Blue Stinger coming out of anyone's mouth but mine. Outside of this podcast, I don't expect to hear Blue Stinger. And then in terms of recommendations, I recommend that you vote if you live in California. Please vote no on recalling Newsom. I don't like that guy very much, but if we recall him, there's a very, very high chance that we get a Republican governor who got like 250 votes because there are 50 people on the ballot, and then they're gonna rescind all COVID restrictions, and we're gonna die. So please vote no on recalling Newsom if you live in California. Thanks.
We'll get rid of him properly later, folks.
Like next year when we can vote properly.
Literally next year. So just keep him around. Just let him do his thing. Whatever.
Let him do it. He did a fine response.
He's not going to kill us. He's just going to be a terrible person.
The end.
You know, I'm reading this. You know what? I think it's going to be of interest to you, both you and Frank, Brandon, and that I'm reading the galleys right now of a book that I never anticipated would be coming out. Volume 2 of Stephen Kent's The Ultimate History of Video Games.
Well,
Did not expect that to happen, but it did happen, and it's coming out in a few days, and it's fun. It is really it's literally just sort of picking up in this, like exactly what his first book was, which was it does not really go into the history of game development or at least so far, like indie games or anything. It's really just like it
talks to rich people.
It is it is a recounting of the console game industries back and forth, starting with the PS2 original Xbox generation and going to the modern day. And there's some interesting new behind the scenes stories, but it's really about like if you care about like the business of the PlayStation versus Xbox versus the Wii and being reminded of things like the Red Ring of Death and stuff like that, and rereading all of that kind of stuff. It's a fun, breezy read so far. So look out for that if that's your thing.
Yeah, that's fun. That actually, in a way, that feels like a niche now. Talking about stuff with that limited framework, and so it actually kind of appeals to me more than
it does. This book knows what it is and what it is not.
Welcome back, Kent.
I am going to recommend a comic book, which is something that I've resolved to do every week, and we'll see how long I keep it up.
I'm going to recommend don't read comics because comics suck.
Frank is wrong. Please don't listen to Frank. Comics are good.
Are bad.
Comics have always been good. Comics will always be good.
They're real bad.
This week, I'd like to recommend The Many Deaths of Layla Starr by Ram V and Felipe Andrade. It's a comic that takes place in Mumbai and is about a death goddess who's been downsized because the person who discovers immortality has just been born, and it goes in some very interesting directions. If you're looking for a cool comic, that one is just about to wrap up with its 5th and final issue, so good time to get on board.
So is she like an Eternal or a mutant?
She's more like an Eternal, I guess.
Okay.
I would also like to recommend that if you're listening to this show on any platform where you can subscribe to or review podcasts, that you do that. It's a great way to keep the algorithms pushing us upwards and forwards. You could also go to patreon.com/insertcredit, as aforementioned, where you could become a patron to submit your own topics, get our regular episodes one day early.
Chris Kohler, do it.
One day early?
Yeah, there we go.
One day early. And even access monthly bonus episodes and other exclusive content. You can also join us on forums.insertcredit.com and follow us on Twitter for our own personal updates and projects. The show is at Insert Credit. I'm at Alex Jaffe. Frank is at Frank Cifaldi. Brandon is at Necrosofty. Chris, what's your Twitter?
It's Kobun Heat. KOBUNHEAT is my Twitter handle. It's awful, and I will never change it.
I love it.
Great. I love it. The show is edited by Esper Quinn with music by Kurt Feldman. Next week is episode 200, so make sure to tune in for that for something we'll figure out. Once more, I'm Alex Jaffe.
I'm Frank Cifaldi.
I'm Brandon Sheffield, and I just accidentally broke a clothes hanger that I was messing with. I feel really bad about
Whoops.
it. Oh, and Chris Kohler, you have to
Anyone
say
else
yourself.
there?
Sorry, I wasn't supposed to.
You people, you just sort of assume that I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing here. I don't know. All right.
It's intuitive. We all signed
You're the
off.
hosts. I'm the
yes,
guest.
and you're with us. You're part of the show.
You don't make the guest be the last person to sign off at the end of the show.
We do.
All right.
That's what we've been doing for 200 episodes.
Which I have not listened to.
You've been in
fair
one.
enough.
You've heard that
You're
one.
not required to listen. Here's what we're going to do, Chris. We're all going to sign off at the end. We're going to say our names. First it'll be me, then it'll be Frank, then it'll be Brandon. Just like the order that we introduced ourselves in the top of the episode. It's going to repeat that way here at the bottom. So after Brandon says his name, get ready to say, I'm Chris Kohler. And once you say that, I will do my signature sign-off for this informal season of Insert Credit. So that's what's going to happen right now. Esper, keep all of this in. Once more, I'm Alex Jaffe.
I'm Frank Cifaldi.
I'm Brandon Sheffield.
And I'm Chris Kohler.
And your game has now been saved. Very good. Thank you,
Thanks.
Chris. That was
Great.
that was
That was good stuff.
fantastic.
I'll love it.
I love it too.